Hello, and welcome to another Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the deferred sales trust is an amazing way for you to exit highly appreciated assets, to diversify your wealth, and make time your friend while deferring hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars of capital gains tax. My name is Brett Swartz, and each and every episode, I am joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas and deal stories. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He is out of the great state of Maryland, and he's on a mission to help especially women who are facing new beginnings, to help them to flourish in their life's new big changes. He's here to help you gain clarity about your situation, what's possible, create a roadmap for financial confidence, and feel assured you have an advisor educating and guiding you. And he has an extensive background. In fact, it's really rare to have a CPA who's also a certified financial analyst. I believe that's how that CFA is pronounced there. But he started his financial services back in 1987, working as a tax professional with the Deloitte & Touche. And for 25 years plus, he has worked extensively in the areas of personal finance and investment management and so much more. Please welcome to the show with me, Phil Weiss. Phil, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, Brett.
Absolutely. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Sure. So my career has had a lot of twists and turns, a lot of changes. You know, as Brett mentioned, I started out working for Deloitte in the tax department. Ultimately decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. And I went and got the CFA designation, Chartered Financial Analyst, as a way to get out of the tax department. Ultimately, I did that and I became an analyst, and then I started my own firm, and kind of my why that's gotten to where I am today. And I like to tell people, so growing up in my house, finances was a really difficult thing. My father was in charge of it. He did not do a good job. We had unpaid bills. We had utilities and services turned off. I remember when I got my driver's license, having to drive down to the electric company, phone company to pay the bill so that our service could come back on. Ultimately, I went to college. I was a psychology major and a pre-med. I went to Duke. I had to leave after 3 years because my father stopped paying the bills. It got to the point where my father actually forged my name to open up credit cards because he didn't have credit. While this was going on, my mom went back to school. She became an occupational therapist and started her own practice. And I think the reason she did that was because she wanted to be able to be strong enough to be out on her own. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer while all this was going on. And during that time, we found out how bad the finances really were. So my mom asked me to help. I did what I could, but unfortunately, her breast cancer metastasized to her brain and she passed away about 18 months later. And so I view the work that I do now as still trying to help women avoid the kind of things that my mother went through. And as part of my mission and my life plan, which I assume we'll talk about later, the first element is that I want to, over time, establish a scholarship for women that go back to school later in life.
Phil, absolutely amazing. I want to thank you, first of all, sharing that and sharing your heart with us. That means a lot to me, being that I grew up in a divorced family with challenges with wealth on my mom's side, where I was with most, and my dad, who had a lot of it, and wasn't let's say a good steward or a great way of sharing that with us, right, during difficult times we're growing up. You know, you touched on a couple things which we're going to dive into a lot here in a minute. And by the way, if you want to learn more about Phil, you can go to apprisewealth.com. But Phil, before we go to building a new wealth plan during times of change, I want to take one other step back. You know, I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given us to be a blessing and help to others. Sometimes it's through trauma, and sometimes it's through, most times it's through challenge, right? These gifts are forged. So what would you say is that one or two gifts or strengths that you feel you've been given and been forged in you that most helps how you help and bless people today?
I think that going through all that I did, I think of the idea that there's two types of role models in this world. You have the good ones and the bad ones. I had a bad one, but through that, I was able to learn everything not to do. And so having experienced all the things that I have, I think it really helps me in terms of being able to work with and identify with my clients, to communicate with them about their whatever they may be facing, and to help them position themselves to live their best life. I think I had come with a variety of experience, both personally and professionally. As you mentioned at the beginning, I'm a CPA. I'm also a CFA charter holder. I'm also a registered life planner. So the combination of those things are really important, I think, in terms of taking a financial plan and remembering that it's not just about building the biggest pile of money. It's about putting that money to use in a way that's best for you and allows you to live your best and most fulfilled life.
Amazing. I'm hearing empathy, and I'm hearing obviously life experiences, and then the unique, I guess, desire to grow in those areas, to get all of those designations, which is not easy, and they're very highly specialized. And so with that being in mind, let's dive right into building a new wealth plan during times of change. So Phil, what is the number one secret to doing just that, to building a new wealth plan during times of change?
I think it starts with trying to understand what's most important and what matters most to you. Now, when I work with clients and I do a life plan, I start out with a basic question: why are you here today? What is it that's brought you to this point that you want to talk to somebody like me? And then I just kind of let you go. It's really, there's a lot of listening involved. It's not a lot of talking on my part, because I want to give you a forum to talk about what matters to you. And then there's more to the process than that. And ultimately it involves putting together a vision for what you want and what matters to you. So we ask a lot of questions that really help you in terms of figuring out what your priorities are. Because a lot of times that's really hard. We don't know, or we get into these situations where we're just sitting there and we're saving, and we get to one level and we get that, and now we want more, and we keep wanting more and more. But maybe we don't have to keep wanting more and more. Sometimes enough, we get to a point where it's enough, and then we can live the life that matters to us. And I think that that adds more value than just building that big pile of money.
Okay. So it sounds like, first of all, starting with listening on a deep level for why are they even, coming to you in the first place, right? And clarifying if they have a clear vision for where they want to go as well, and what really matters most to them. And that's kind of starts to build the foundation of where you're going to go. Is that a fair summary so far, Phil?
Yes, that's a great summary, and it shows that you're a good listener too, Brett.
Okay, excellent. So what's the number two secret to building a new wealth plan during times of change?
So I think once we've identified those things that matter, now it's taking action, right? Sometimes we set out these goals and these things we're going to do, and we make steps that are too hard to identify with, too hard to do. So we want to set some goals that we can accomplish. It's like if you want to lose weight and you just have a general goal that says, I want to lose weight. It's really hard to do that. But if you say, I want to lose X number of pounds per month, or you set a goal and you make positive strides towards it, it becomes a lot easier to achieve that goal. It's like when I wanted to get onto a regular exercise plan, it started with simple things like, let's exercise 1 day a week. And then somebody said, let's set yourself up for success too. So it became putting my clothes out that I was going to wear in the morning when I got on the elliptical the night before. So that way, when I woke up, I saw them, and I'd already made the commitment to doing that when I woke up the night before. And it's a lot easier to follow through on our commitments when we take steps like that to help.
Okay. So then it sounds like it's setting small, measurable goals, and also small measurable steps to achieve those goals, and trying to make it as simple as possible. Is that a fair summary so far?
Yes, it is.
So could you apply that to finances, right? Because now my mind goes to, okay, great. So Phil, give us maybe a deal story or the client story where you gave some specific small steps in the context of what they were trying to achieve.
Sure. So I'm going to take an example. It may not exactly fit to what you just described, but I think the overall message will work. So I said I became a registered life planner. That's a designation that I earned this year. And it's an experiential process. And when I went through the process, I created my own life plan, and I shared it as part of my blog on my website. And one of my clients that I've been working with for a while, she emailed me as I was going through the process and said, Phil, I'm feeling so stressed at work. I don't know what to do. I've taken family leave. I'm taking 12 weeks off. I don't know if I'm going to go back. I don't know what any of it means, but I have to do it. And I started to email a response. So I said, no, that's not the right thing in this case. So I called her up to find out what was really going on. And I said, let's do your life plan. Let's see what happens. And then we started that process. And then she read my life plan. And she's the line that I shared before that said to me, Phil, I've been sitting here trying to build the biggest pile of money and I never knew why, what it was for. So we went through her life plan. And the situation for them was that her and her husband both had good paying jobs and they lived on only one salary. So they had put away a lot of money. So what we did through the process was we realized that she didn't have to work. She could change and do things that she wanted instead of going to this job that was really stressing her out. She had other stresses in her life too, because she had one child that had started college and another that's going to be going soon. We took away a lot of the stress. Now when I talk to her, it's like she's an entirely different person. She looks different. She sounds different. It's very different. You know, if I go back and think of a more specific example, I have a couple that came to me when I first started my practice, and they had a lot of debt. They had all kinds of credit card debt. They had student loan debt, all those things. And we put in a plan to pay down the credit card debt. We put in the wife works for a nonprofit, so she was able to get into the public loan student forgiveness program. So she didn't have to pay, after she works a certain number of years, she won't have to pay anymore. All their credit card debt is gone. And I said to them, I'm so proud of you. You've done such a great job. And they're like, Phil, we couldn't have done it without you. You were the one that helped us understand what it is that we needed to do. And so we, like I said, we put in a plan. We got them, they had good enough credit. They could get a 0% interest rate credit card. They put some on that so they could pay it over time without paying interest. And then they attacked their other balances. And by the time they were done, by using that kind of strategy, they were able to make that debt go away. And now they're in so much better position.
Amazing. We're talking with Phil Weiss. You can go to apprisewealth.com. It's apprisewealth.com, APPRISE wealth.com. I love that practicality of that each person was looking for some freedom in different areas. One was that freedom from their time and their energy and the stress that was caused from work. And literally the solution was already there, but they were perhaps inside of the bottle, right? They couldn't see outside of that. And it sounds like you were able to help expand their perspective on what they had and also realign with the focus of what they really wanted, right? Which was that life plan. Without that life plan, you're right. It feels like we're building a big pile of money for what end, for what purpose, right? And if you don't have that purpose and you don't have that why, you don't have that connected, wealth, it feels like at times, Phil, can become kind of like a curse or kind of like not a blessing, right? So talk to us about that forging of changing that mindset with people.
It's really interesting. It is a lot of mindset. And a lot of times we look and we see somebody that we know, they live in a bigger house, or they drive a fancier car. And we think, well, I want that. But what we don't know is what lies underneath. How much debt do they have? What's the rest of their position? Are they living paycheck to paycheck? If times get tough, is that the person that has to sell their house because they can't make the payment anymore, versus being able to be in a place where you're less affected by all those things? So there's a lot of mindset that's involved here. And that's why the life planning process to me is so important. It's really financial planning done right, because we identify what those things are that matter to you. Like if you want to go out for fancy meals, that's fine. But then what else is it that you're doing that you don't need to do, so that you have that right balance and you're spending the money on the things that matter to you? If you want to take trips with your family, that's great. But again, we always want to have a balance, right? We have lots of I think that we always have lots of competing things, right? When you're a family, you want to save for your future, for your retirement. If you have kids, you probably want to save to help them pay for their education. You want to be able to have some experiences. So we have to be able to find that balance. And that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's why the life plan makes so much sense, because oftentimes we think the answer to our financial plan is the finances, right? is just paying down the debt, or is just getting passive income, or is just figuring out a way to get enough saved up for retirement. But oftentimes it's not until you take the holistic approach with the life plan, where you're looking at your faith, your family, your fulfillment, your fun, your career, your personal development, your leadership. These are some of the ones that I would come to mind on mine. But what would you say is the one that's the most overlooked for the life plan that tends to have the biggest impact, Phil, once people dive in with you to go through it?
That's a tough one, because I think it's a unique thing for each individual. During the life planning process, I talked about priorities and identifying priorities. So I'm going to tell you about the 3 questions that we ask people. The first question is really kind of a fun question to answer. Here, money is no object. Imagine that you're financially secure and you could do anything that you wanted. You have enough money for now and in the future. The question is, what would you do and how would you live your life? Then the next question, it starts to get a little bit tougher. This time you go to the doctor and he says, you have 5 to 10 years left to live. The good news is you're not ever going to feel sick. The bad news is you don't know when you're going to go. At this point, money is part of the equation. So now the question is, what would you do and how would you live your life and what would you change? And then the third question is the hardest one of all. This time you go to the doctor and you get the unfortunate news, today's the day. It's your last day. And the question isn't, what are you going to do? It's, what did you not get to do and who did you not get to be? And some people view that as thoughts of regret. What do you regret? I don't view it that way. I view it as it's avoiding regret. What are the things that I can identify that really matter to me that I could start doing now so that I don't end my life not having done them? So I mentioned the scholarship that I want to set up, and I've started funding that earlier this year. I identified that now so I can do that and I can have the benefit of seeing it happen. And there's other elements in my life plan like that. So it's about finding those things that matter to you. It's like, if a lot of people say, well, I want to be a grandparent, something like that. Obviously we can't control that. If something happened to us before our kids are old enough to give us grandchildren, then that didn't happen. So what can you do instead? You can have the best possible relationship with your kids until then. So that way, at least you enjoy them, you get to experience them so that you're positioned to be that grandparent and to have that time with your grandkids. But in the meantime, you're not just sitting there regretting that it didn't happen.
I'm blown away, Phil. I want to just recap those for everyone who's listening. By the way, you can learn more about Phil Weiss by going to apprisewealth.com and apprisewealth.com. So there's 3 questions on life plan that you start with. Number 1, if money was not an object, and you could do anything, what would you do? How would you live your life? And what things would change, right? Just kind of that general, kind of that big macro view of, and just taking finances out of the equation. Number 2, you go to the doctor and the doctor says you have 5 to 10 years left to live. Same questions, right? But you're in great health. Like you have all the energy, you have all the health, like that's not holding you back. But sometimes between 5 and 10 years, it's over. What would you do? How would you live your life, and how would you change? What would you change? And then the last one is meant to, really focus like on the day to day, right? So it's very specific, and it says, now you only have 1 more day to live. If you knew that today was your last day to live, what's the thing that you felt like you might have regretted not doing? Is that a fair summary, Phil?
Yes and no on the last one. It's about, I get, you said it, regret not doing, sort of, but like, to me, it's about avoiding the regret that comes with not doing that. That's the nuance that I would put in, right? It's not that I regret not doing it. It's what can I identify now so I don't get there and regret it. Got it.
Yeah. So what would that come? What comes to mind? But then it's like, now what action can I take because I'm not dying today, right? Lord willing, right? You still have another day, and you can start doing that thing. Fair summary. Did I catch it on that one? That last piece?
Yes, that's better. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Wow. So I'm blown away, right? So building a new wealth plan during times of change, it really feels like it's starting with that life plan, right? Or if any time, I guess, at all, right? In times of wanting to thrive, in times of wanting to fulfillment and purpose, and clarifying that, practically walk us through that. Somebody spends, they say, Phil, I want everything you're talking about. I go to apprisewealth.com and I start to take these steps, and I start to work with Phil, and Phil's, we're working this, and we've got this life plan in place. Now, what are your best clients doing? Are they looking at it every single day? Are they talking to their family about it? Are they talking to their kids about it? Are they like, talk about the community aspect of once you have this personal thing that your best clients are taking action and continuing on the commitments they made.
So if we think about life planning, I'm going to give you an acronym for a second. So the process is called evoke. So I talked about that first meeting. That's the exploration meeting. The second meeting where I ask those questions is vision. And at the vision meeting, that's where we kind of create the vision as to what's going to happen, what you'd like to happen over the next 12 to 24 months, because life changes and some things you accomplish, you want to move on to the next. Some things will remain there forever. And then after that, we look at obstacles in terms of what can get in the way. And remember, when I talk about all these things, a lot of it's me helping you decide what those things are. I'm not going to tell you what can get in the way, and I'm not going to tell you how to fix it. It's really helping you think through and reason. What are these things that get in the way, and what can you do to fix it? And then we get to the knowledge aspect where that's where we start to apply some of the techniques as an advisor. How much do you need to save? Understanding what your expenses are. All those elements of I do a lot of tax planning. I have a tax background, right? So what can we do? When I think of taxes, I always think about how do we lower our lifetime tax liability. I worry less about the liability in a given year and more about what it'll be over our lifetime. So the clients that are going to do the best are the ones that are going to be in contact, and they're motivated. That really is a big element, right? We've created this vision. Now it's something that really matters to you. You should be motivated to do it. So now you're going to take those steps, and we're going to have conversations on an ongoing basis. How are you doing? Are you running into any roadblocks? Right? And we're going to check in on the financial side too, just to make sure that you remain on track. I always think of it that we put a plan, and I hate to say it, but if you do a financial plan, it's almost like it's obsolete when it's done, because not everything's going to work out the way that we forecast. But that doesn't mean that the tools that we have in there, in terms of how much we're going to save, what types of accounts to put them in, and what our goals are and what we want to work towards, we still do that. It's just the way we get there can change sometimes too.
Okay, amazing. Tons of wisdom here. So evoke, I didn't catch all of the exact acronyms, but I heard, the first is experiencing those three questions we talked about. There's vision, there's obstacles, and then there's some details with the finances, right? And then there's ongoing conversations. Could you real quickly just walk down the evoke? What do they each stand for again?
Sure. The first E is exploration. That's why are we here, and what's your most fulfilled life look like? The second is the vision. That's where we ask the three questions. The third meeting is the obstacles in terms of what can get in the way. Then in the fourth stage, or the K, is knowledge. So that's where my background, my knowledge, my experience as a financial advisor help you devise a plan that can help you achieve that vision that we put in place for you. And then the last E is execution. Now we got to go out and do it.
Got it. Wow. Blown away, Phil. This is fantastic. Want to shift a little bit here. By the way, again, if you want to get with Phil, and you should get with Phil, you should want to after all of this. I can't imagine not wanting to spend some time with Phil. Aprisewealth.com to help you clarify your life plan, build a new wealth plan during times of change, all of the above. So valuable. I want to shift to a little bit of capital gains tax solutions, Phil. We geek out about tax, right? And ways to exit well, to unlock freedoms, make an impact for families and communities. And it's during that time of change being like a harvest season of a 5, 10, 50, $100 million company sale or business or real estate or cryptocurrency. And then having a strategy or strategies that helped you to unlock the wealth plan that you envision for your future. So a lot of the same things or some similarities that we're doing here, but we do it with a specific niche. But I'm curious, what have you found to be the most frustrating thing as it pertains to exit planning, capital gains tax, estate tax? We can talk about the 1031 exchange if that comes to mind, or what are the biggest things that people are frustrated when they're exiting, but they feel like, hey, I wish I had a better way to exit. And maybe you can talk about a couple of strategies that, you come to mind that help solve that.
So for me, one of the things that I find is that you run to people that have large concentrated stock positions and things like that don't know what to do, because it's going to cost a lot of money. they have substantially appreciated stock, and they're going to pay tax to get rid of it. So strategies to help reduce the tax on that. I have people that have large retirement account benefits in a qualified plan, such as a 401k or an IRA. They have big balances, and they don't realize how much tax you can pay on those when you exit, because of the fact that if we get a tax break on money that goes in, we have to pay tax when it comes back out, and those taxes are at ordinary rates. So the biggest frustration I think that I find sometimes with people is when I talk to them about those strategies. And sometimes I work with people that are more do-it-yourselfers. Other people want me to do as much as I can for them. And the do-it-yourselfers are like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. But if they don't, they're going to have a lot of taxes later in life. They could end up paying much higher tax rates. They could end up paying higher Medicare premiums. And I like to think I wrote a blog called How Roth Conversions Can Benefit You, Your Surviving Spouse, and Your Heirs. Because if you think about it, when we're a couple, we're taxed at a joint tax rate. When one spouse goes, the survivor is going to be single. They're going to keep most of the income. One Social Security benefit will go away. If there's pensions or something like that, they may or may not go away. But all the money in the retirement account is going to stay. And so then their tax rate's going to go up. So if we do Roth conversions before that happens, that helps. And then if you're fortunate and you've done the right things have happened with your kids, that money can pass to them at the end, and it can make their tax rate go up. So a lot of these things involve thinking ahead, as opposed to just thinking about the now. Yeah,
no, very, very well put there. I want to focus like a laser on that public stock piece. I started out at Marcus and Millichap, who will buy and sell multifamily properties. And what we found is that people got frustrated with this 1031 exchange, being that it was highly appreciated assets, and they actually wanted to diversify maybe into some stocks or diversify into some other assets. They weren't so heavily concentrated into real estate, right? And the timing was right to sell, but then they end up having to overpay and buy a property within that short period of time because of the rules for the 1031. Likewise, we've had clients have highly appreciated stock positions, right? And they want to diversify out of it, and they want to sell high, or cryptocurrency, right? And so we've been able to do it using something called a deferred sales trust, where it works for public stock, private stock, cryptocurrency, business sales, real estate, primary homes. And in other words, we eliminate the need for the 1031 exchange, any asset of any kind. And not only does it on public stock eliminate or defer the capital gains taxes, but it eliminates the estate tax without any charity, without any gifting, without any life insurance. So I'm curious, have you ever heard anything like that before, Phil? And what are your thoughts as someone who's, your advanced tax background come to mind when you hear something like that?
I admit that I'm not overly familiar with it, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. When I think about those large stock positions, I also think about one of the things that's come into the play in the last couple of years is direct indexing. And direct indexing is a way that I can start to diversify some of those large positions, because instead of owning an S&P 500 index fund, I can basically own the S&P 500. And then there's software out there that can go and look and say, okay, here are some stocks that are losses within the S&P 500. Here's some things that perform somewhat similarly that we can replace them with, and we can start to recognize those losses over time. There are also exchange funds that you can put a large stock position into, get a more diversified stock position in return, things like that. So the principles that you're talking about sound similar. I mean, I am familiar with the 1031 exchanges. When you talk about the idea, like I had a client that had Apple stock that had 14-cent basis because it was bought 3 days after the IPO. And it's like one thing that was simple was, remember, we get the step up in basis. So as long as the position wasn't too dominant in their portfolio, you don't really want to do anything with it until after the person passes, because you're going to get that big step up in basis. And that's another way to avoid the gains tax there.
Absolutely. And by the way, if you want to learn more about how to defer capital gains taxes on the sale of public stock, cryptocurrency businesses, real estate, you can just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. It's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Also works for cryptocurrency. We did, before the crypto crash, about 13.5 million. We actually wrote a book about it called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. It hit #1 bestseller. In fact, Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank's in the book, and I had him on the podcast. And if you go back and listen to some of the other episodes, he was a board member on an energy drink called Celsius. And that particular energy drink went from about 26 cents a share to like $20+ per share. And so he had a huge capital gain on that stock. And the question for him was, what, you're telling me you can defer capital gains taxes on public stock? And the answer is yes, you can. You can learn more about that by going to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That being said, Phil, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, let's go.
All right. Knowing what you know now, Phil, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget make sure to tell yourself to do?
Start saving sooner. I said I had a lot of financial issues growing up. That made me wait. I wish time in the market matters more than timing the market. The sooner you can start off, the better. If you have kids, see if you can start them off before they even leave the house, right? You can start a Roth IRA for your child if they have earned income when they're teenagers or even younger. So start as soon as you can. That'd be the biggest thing I would tell myself.
I love that. Question number 2, what's the #1 book or podcast or YouTube channel that you've recommended the most in the past year?
#1 book would be Psychology and Money by Morgan Housel. It takes a lot of financial concepts and puts them into terms that just about anybody can understand. He's a really good writer and really good at simplifying things.
Excellent. Question number 3, what are you most curious about right now?
So something we haven't talked about with my business is I'm planning to merge with another firm. I think it's got great possibilities and great potential. I'm curious to see if we're right.
Hey, well, that's exciting. Well, congratulations on that. By the way, if you have a capital gains tax situation there, we help all the time with mergers and acquisitions with deferring that tax and actually being able to redeploy it back into new business ventures, all tax deferred, which is pretty cool. Question, I guess, number 4 or 5 here. What's your #1 leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
I would say that it's to treat everyone else the way that I want to be treated.
Love that. And next question. This is for our AI revolution that's going on. What's the #1 way that you use ChatGPT?
Well, I blog every week. Some of my blogs, 1 out of every 3, it's a long form blog where I write a couple thousand words on a topic. I will go to ChatGPT not to write the blog, but I will go and help me come up with an outline. Or I actually did a recent webinar where I used it to help me with some of the marketing material in advance to talk about it. Like you input the information, then it gave me back some things that could be used on social media to help market.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, sometimes I just take it and I'll just talk into the into the app on my phone, and I'll say, "Hey, help me come up with a marketing idea for the webinar that I have coming up. That I'll be talking about this, and that." And it gives like a basic outline, and then I'm going in there and I'm editing. It just gets a lot of the thoughts like you would just record on a recorder, but you're recording it to ChatGPT, and it helps to put it on into a writing or an outline. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a great way to use it. Second to last question. Is this, or I guess #1 question, I guess this is the last question. I think we're wrapping up here. We're kind of out of time. After all your success, helping all the people you've helped, Phil, build life plans and build financial plans and get freedom with their capital and their time and their energy, what would you say is the #1 practice that you practice to stay centered in your values and stay encouraged to charge forward to reach even higher heights?
I think the biggest thing for me is the discipline that comes with exercising every day, and also constant learning. Those would be the 2 things. And actually, I kind of tie those together because when I get on the elliptical, I have an elliptical that allows me, I know that a lot of people don't print the way they used to, but I still will print things that I can put on my elliptical and I read while I'm on the elliptical because I can keep a good pace. It's all hands free. And so it's constant learning and just having the discipline of a regular routine. When I miss that exercise in the morning, I feel it during my day. It's very different.
Phil Weiss, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for sharing so much wisdom in just 33 minutes here. I want to continue to keep using your gifts of being able to empathize, communicate, and help people to create amazing plans for their life and for their finances, I want to encourage you to keep taking the gifts of challenging past, right, with your father, and to continue to make a difference and impact for people's lives today. I know it means the world to me to be able to connect with you today, and thank you so much. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, Phil, would you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
The best place to find me is you can go to my website. It's Apprise Wealth, APPRISE wealth.com. I also have a free ebook. You can go to apprisewealth.com/ebook to download a copy.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Phil, for being on the show. And also thank all of our listeners for listening to an episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the deferred sales trust, is an amazing way for you to exit public stock, businesses, real estate, save a failed 1031 exchange. In fact, we have the best 1031 exit plan. You can go to experttaxsecrets.com to get started there. Make sure if you're doing a 1031, you have us as a team to help you in case it fails. So you can default into the deferred sales trust, diversify your wealth, and time the market a little bit better rather than just going into the real estate market that can be highly priced. And so go to experttaxsecrets.com for that. And the last thing is check out the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. Hit #1 bestseller on Amazon. You can check that out by going to Amazon and searching Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, or go to our website, capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. We so appreciate everyone out there. And